Welcome to Building Research Relevance. My name is Stephen Shaw, and for the next about 8 weeks, I will continue to be the chair of the Department of Educational and Counseling Psychology. Some of you can probably tell I'm getting excited to leave that position and get back to doing some real good creative research, as opposed to being, middle management. Apologize for the delays in getting these two issues out for this week, but I was sick last week, and not just sick, but I lost my voice, which is a little hard for podcast, so I might be a little weak today, but we'll get it done. And today's episode, or today's session, we're going to talk about how do you build shared spaces for creative work. And if remember, last time I talked about some artificial intelligence, and especially with large language models. What those are great about is it helps us to see unusual or unexpected relationships among field of studies where we don't typically inform each other. In other words, it can help break down silos. And that really is a good way to use AI, is to create those webs that integrate information from multiple sources. But actually, there's a better way. And I mentioned about all the problems I have with large language models, which is fine. By the way, there's a really good article on this, a good essay by Tessie McCollum, I believe her name is, and she did it in the New York Times about AI, which she refers to as mid-technology, which I kind of found funny. But nonetheless, it's still a very good article, and I think it came out Friday of this week, so I would definitely recommend that. But opportunities here to build something new. So how do we build something new? How do we build shared spaces to work with? Now, we talked a little bit, one of the previous episodes or sessions, we talked about consortia and big team science. Those are really positive approaches to teamwork, having multiple approaches, having ways to accumulate data sets so you have more power. And it really creates some interdisciplinary work. Those are great. But sometimes when you get into interdisciplinary work, it can mean some intellectual sloppiness as opposed to being truly integrative. It also takes a long time to set up. You almost have to have bylaws and rules and funding and a lot of personality management that are a real pain in the butt to administer. You can do it, but it helps to be everybody on the same page. And we know, I can only say for psychology, but for every 2 psychologists, there's 3 opinions. You can never reach consensus on that. So I'm going to try a little bit of a proof of concept is what I'm working on. In fact, I'll try to get this out by summer, and we'll see what happens. But it's a real simple idea, and it's more of creating a digital. I'm just going to call it a shared digital garden, and it's a space where people can come together, learn, get new ideas, help create website or a web of information on how people can get together and integrate new information from different perspectives. So here's how we're going to do this. And I'll start out. I'm going to start out as a proof of concept and just get my lab to work on it. So there'll be students involved, and students are great to help make this thing work. And then eventually I'll probably expand to my university department. And once that works, then we'll work on probably need a different mechanism to make that work. And we just, at McGill, we just got really the idea of SharePoint. I mean, we've had SharePoint, but now individual folders or drives that you can work from. So here's the plan, and here's what I'd like to do. And I'll be starting with, in fact, some of you can contact me and I can just put an invite to you on when this gets started, which should be probably about the end of April, I think is when we're going to get this started. But the purpose is online to have a series of folders with has relevant resources, infographics and stories of the projects and research methods that are being used, the status of the projects, as well as things like mind maps, things like word clouds, other ideas, the sandbox. So here's the way it's going to work. We'll create a SharePoint system for the lab. In that lab will be multiple folders. One of those folders will simply be the articles that we use as the core articles for the foundation of the research paradigm that we're using. They'll also be in their funders and stuff like that. So one, just a database of papers, awesome, just like Zotero or anything else. Second would be each of the projects that we're working on, especially any manuscripts or data collection, will have its own folder. In that would be relevant data sets, relevant plans, whether they are phase one manuscripts for registered reports. Student projects are on there, like theses and things of that nature. Sometimes they'll be tied to the open science resources to that website. But also in there, so there'll be news. You can post news on there of things that are happening, so it can be a shared collective space. What I'm really excited though is the Sandbox component. The Sandbox folder is a series of interactive mind maps, word clouds, and topic webs that any member of the Digital Garden can play with. They can add their topics and see how those topics connect with other topics that are currently being worked on in the garden. It's a place to find research partners. It's a place to compare ideas, to generate new ideas, and really to be part of this research community. The goal is to develop this integrative, model-based, and theory-based research in the field of school psychology. Like I say, we're going to start small within our lab, because in my lab, students can do their own content. What they need to follow my lead on is the process. So we do a lot of open science and shared data and registered reports, and you have to follow the process. However, how you do it and what you do is kind of up to the students. I don't really care too much about the content. As long as it's relatively important and relevant, it's the process that makes it relevant. The Sandbox is to me the biggest part. That's the part that guests will come in. And the guests will come in and they will be able to look and see, oh, I see this is what they're doing. I see how it's connected to my work, and then begin to make more connections. They can edit and add their things to mind maps and websites and begin pulling ideas together. Just like the artificial intelligence talks about bringing diverse areas in one place, this will be starting out with my little group, and we'll see how other people, as they come in, can integrate those ideas into their work. So this is kind of the exciting part. But we're going to see if it works as a proof of concept in school psychology. Eventually, not just using SharePoint, because that's kind of specific to Microsoft, and McGill has some pretty good supports for it. But eventually, what we'll do is create our own system. We'll work with the library to have our own repository of information. Excuse me, I still haven't gotten over this cold. But once we get our lab working on it, we kind of work out some bugs, get the department working on it so other colleagues can go in or other students can work on it as well as they'd like. But then eventually we'd like to spread it out and make invitations to other school psychologists across Canada. We might open up to the US, but who knows? They might put a tariff on our website, I'm not sure. But we'll open it up to folks in Canada. The goal is this to be a catalyst for creative, high-powered research that eventually can be funded and create creative research by having this garden where scholars and students play, think, collaborate, and produce. So this is really one of my big summer projects that, like I say, I'll get started. I hope to have it started in May and work on it over the summer, add people later in the summer, and just see how it goes. But I'll keep this audience. I'll keep them up to date on what happens. But the purpose here is to spend time when we can't all meet together like we used to. You can't bring people in and just fly everybody in or even have the space sometimes to have a large-scale lab meeting. My students are spread all over because being a clinical program, I have people on field placement in all parts of Montreal. On internship, they're all over North America, all over the US and Canada. And so they're at a great distance away. The idea of having a digital space that can function asynchronously and yet allow different people with different ideas to share and find that integrative framework by using a sandbox feature, as well as being able to access the news of what's happening in our group and the idea of having just resources there to get things done. And that includes our favorite types of programs and software that we use, what we're using for statistical packages, some R code and things like that can be in there so people can have it, access it, play with it, and have fun. But the purpose is to replace that idea that AI, not really to replace it, that doesn't sound right, but if AI has one big purpose that's really valuable, and that is to set up different perspectives, different ideas, and integrate them in one place, you don't need AI for that. In fact, there's all sorts of problems with that. It's a good thing, but there's problems with it too, such as some of the ones I already talked about. But what this could be is a place for us to get together, create, have a sandbox, and have resources. And this way, I'm hoping our research becomes more creative. And the more creative research with the mindset that we're going to function on making things more relevant. Building research relevance is the name of this little series of talks. But this will be one of the outcomes of the effort to build tools for research relevance, is just to create the collective and shared digital garden. So I hope this works. And if those of you interested in participating, you can contact me in a variety of ways. Most of you know me through email or social media. Contact me that way. And what we'll do is we'll invite you to function in our digital garden. You can be one of our pilot projects as we get this started over the late spring and into summer. For other people, we'll make invitations later as we go. But this is one of the ideas we have for building a sense of making research process so that it can be productive, independent, truly creative, model-based, theory-based, and work together as a group. So that's our goal. So let me stop here, but do look at the creating this shared digital garden. Thanks so much for your ideas, and we will be back next time, where we'll be talking a little bit more about how to access information and how people should access research and scholarship. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.